Whereas with crypto, like we can start building that kind of stuff in. Like people could verify their identities against their addresses, and you could use zero knowledge proofs to not disclose their identity. This is where I want to see the industry building out towards, to have, given the transparency in the blockchain, it should be impossible for people to conduct crime and for scams to happen.
Concepts do you think most people get stuck on when you're trying to explain crypto to people?
It so depends, right? Like, I mean, when so many people still just don't know anything about crypto at all. And so even the concept of, what is a digital asset? What does it mean? Like, how does a wallet work? Where is my crypto? The concept of like signing transactions, the view that it's all just used for money laundering, when like that's like, the furthest thing from the truth. It's like, this is like an incredibly transparent, massively public way of doing payments, and it's like, it's a pretty bad idea to use it for criminal activity, but that's still the kind of label that most people have in their heads about it. So yeah, there's so many myths out there about crypto still, sadly.
So when we left off, we were kind of talking about crypto myths, and that's something that I'm very interested in, and like part of what we do in CryptoGirls when we're trying to educate is to kind of debunk those myths, but it is quite like a steep hill to be climbing. I saw an article on One News the other day that kind of compared the entire crypto industry to a Ponzi scheme, which is so sad to have it kind of that myopic view. How do you think that we can fight that narrative? And do you think that crypto and Web3 like needs a rebrand? I know people are like more kind of used to calling stuff digital assets now because it seems less like wrapped up in that. But do you think that it's something that needs more focus in the industry?
Personally, I'm like, I agree, it's so frustrating, but I'm like, I wouldn't even bother focusing on it. I'm just like, let's just get on and build cool stuff. And once we build stuff, they will come. And, part of the problem with crypto and the reason why people call it a Ponzi scheme is because they don't see that there's any underlying value. Like, there's a lot of similarities between crypto and fiat in terms of, the value of New Zealand dollar or a Bitcoin is only worth what people are willing to pay for it, supply and demand, all of that sort of thing. But where it gets different is that the New Zealand dollar has an economy kind of underpinning it. It has the GDP of an entire country kind of backing it up, whereas Bitcoin doesn't have that. It's just a lot of speculation. But that said, the more that we build in those use cases, the more that we, embrace Web3, have those creator economies, have those, actual functioning ways of doing finance and doing, digital assets that are adding value, I think those conversations will just, fall by the wayside. People will forget that they ever called it a scam. They'll just be embracing it every day because it's part of day-to-day life. And that's genuinely where I see digital assets heading in the future.
Yeah, and that's such a good way to look at it as well. And I think any new technology faces a bit of an uphill slog. Like I remember we talked to Alex Sims a few months, last year actually it would have been, and she was kind of sent us a video afterwards, and it was people talking about like Excel and like the word, and it was just wild. It was like something from outer space that they were talking about, and obviously now that's just second nature to us. Like we're so used to using this tech, but yeah, I think you're totally right. I think it's use cases and actually just being people getting maybe better interfaces.
Absolutely. Like we need to do so much on the user interfaces in the space. There's a whole lot of really bad stuff because I think in crypto, the tech has been built by the techies for the techies. And so you have all these things that are like, absolutely terrifying for everyday users. And when it comes to your money, to have fear as your overriding emotion when you're dealing with it, like that's not ideal, right? So it's like we need to do so much better in that space. But also, to your point around when Excel came out, it was like, what is this crazy thing? Like, this is what excites me so much in the space is that we just have no idea what the future is going to bring in terms of once we make money programmable and we make value, like instant, free, digital, like what does that mean? What can we do with it? Like we have no idea. We'll be sitting here in 20 years time going, oh my goodness, we never could have back then imagined all of these things now. And I did a blog post last week where I linked to this, and I don't know if I've talked to you guys about it before. It's one of my favorites is this episode of Letterman where Bill Gates is on in like 1996, I think. And Bill Gates is trying to explain to Letterman what the internet is and why it's cool. And Letterman's just like shooting him down. And he's like, Bill Gates is like, oh, you can listen to a sports game. And he's like, well, we've got the radio. And he's like, oh, but you can pause it and come back later. And he's like a tape deck. And so it's just kind of like, they just could not see the value. Whereas now we're like, hey, the internet lets us do this. Like, we're talking with Kita. She's overseas. We're in New Zealand. We're recording this thing. We're going to broadcast it. People, later it can this would just blow minds. And that's where I see digital assets going, is we have no idea what's coming, but it's going to be cool.
So last year crypto was a really, really rough year. Did that impact the Easy Crypto business at all?
Yeah, we tend to follow the market quite closely, the global market, in terms of what's happening with volumes. So globally, volumes peaked in 2021. There was still a bit of activity sort of early 2022, and then NFTs started to crash, and then Terra Luna, and then FTX, and last year was a train wreck. But yeah, so our volumes have definitely dropped off. We've seen them really stabilize though, which is interesting. We've got just a really sort of solid core base of people still buying and selling cryptocurrency. We see quite a bit of, the little volatility movements, just last week with the SEC case with Ripple. That saw a big boom, and, we had a really good trading day, just people trading off that news. So we do see quite a bit of that. But yeah, mostly it's pretty stable. It's pretty solid, good solid bear market revenues, and yeah, we're sort of watching for the signs of that next bull run, because that's actually one of the biggest concerns for us, is that when crypto goes nuts, it can go nuts so quickly with such little warning, and people want to get in and they don't want to be delayed. If we can't process orders fast enough, or if we people are reaching out to our customer support desk and we can't respond quickly enough, they're not very forgiving of that. So we need to be able to sort of turn on a dime and make sure that we're resourced up should the markets go nuts again, which there's a halving coming up around the corner that often has an impact. So we'll see. Watching closely.
I'm looking forward to the next bull market as well. I think that'll be a really exciting time, particularly with just how tumultuous the last year has been. And I know that it's not the only year that's been a shit show in crypto, but the Ripple thing I think is pretty ground shattering. I think with being ruled not a security for the most part, apart from those investment contracts. I need to read the case, but I remember seeing the figures, and it was up doubled obviously in price, and then 1,500% trading volumes. That is wild. That would have been so crazy for you guys.
Still nowhere near where Ripple was trading at in 2017, 2018 though, when I bought in. So still got a way to go.
Just in terms of infrastructure and how much infrastructure Easy Crypto has to kind of maintain all these transactions, can you give us a picture of what that looks like? Is it a few computers, or is it a whole room of databases going on? I don't know.
Yeah. No, we're all in the cloud, and we do a lot of one of the things that's really important to us is that, we're non-custodial. That's very important to us because we don't want to hold our user funds. But it's also very important to us that we have, uptime as close to 100% as possible. We want people to be really confident in our service. We don't want to be dropping offline because, some supplier is upgrading some XYZ thing. So we try to have multiple redundancies in all of our systems. So we've got servers and, we use Google Cloud and AWS, and we have sort of those, all of your classic big online cloud solutions for our servers and for our databases and all of the backups. But yeah, everything we do runs in the cloud, runs online, and we also use, multiple infrastructure players when it comes to our financial flows. Again, wanting to make sure that we can move money around the world as fast as possible within the confines of the banking sector, which don't like to work on weekends or public holidays, and we just got 7-day banking in New Zealand, which is such an amazing feat, and it's just such a kind of a bizarre irony against crypto. It's we've been 24/7 since birth, and yet here we have the banks have just allowed us to do payments on a Saturday, and we're yeah, let's go get them.
Oh my god, it's about time. Yeah, and with the non-custodial thing, Sophie and I love that, and we've been trying to teach our listeners about non-custodial, especially since the FTX thing, where I used to see Instagram stories of women who have been storing their crypto on exchanges, and I didn't know this was still going on. Last year, I did, if I had known that people were storing money on exchanges, and a lot of people at that, I would have tried to speak up about this a lot sooner. And then, ever since Sophie and I have been talking about non-custodial versus custodial, and also trying to find exchanges that are non-custodial. And, Easy Crypto we found is one of the only ones in the world that are non-custodial. So many of the popular exchanges like Binance, I can't remember. I think Kraken is also custodial. FTX obviously was custodial. There's so many of the big players, they're custodial, and there's so many people using them, and they're storing the money on the exchange, and they think they own crypto. And it's really, really scary. So can you explain in your own words, like, what non-custodial is and why this is important?
Yeah, and I think a little bit of our backstory there, because we started only a little bit before the Cryptopia collapse. And for anyone who was around in crypto then, that was, start of 2018, and Cryptopia went offline with, millions of dollars of people's funds in it. And that was New Zealand's biggest exchange at the time. When we built Easy Crypto, we always wanted, we never wanted to be a honeypot for hacks, like be somewhere that people would try to attack us to get, our customers' money out of. So we went into it going, we don't want to store people's funds for them because, that's really risky. We want to enable them to store their funds for themselves. And this is what, non-custodial is, or self-custody is probably the better way to explain in that sentence, where it's, if you are fully in control of your own cryptocurrency, you're holding it in a wallet that, is your wallet, you have access to that. That means that you at any time can send your funds wherever you like. You're not at risk of, say, a third party holder going off, line, a collapse, someone stealing your money. Even if the wallet company decides to shut up shop and fold, you still own that crypto and you can still access it yourself. And that's really important. And this is one of, those key tenets of cryptocurrency, is this idea of decentralisation. Like, instead of centralised entities like banks being in control of your funds, you as an individual can actually hold and access and manage those yourself. And the banking one's quite an interesting one because, we like to think of our money in our bank as being our own money, but it's actually just an IOU from the bank. And your bank can, within reason, they can decide whether or not you have access to those funds. And we have this challenge a lot with our customers where they want to make a payment to us to buy crypto and their bank says, nah, we're not happy with you making that payment. And they actually get refused to make a transaction that they have authorized. So it's a really interesting tension of, it's your money sitting at the bank, but the bank can, to some extent tell you what you can and can't do with it. And so crypto is really the antithesis of it. It's like, it's your money, you're holding it in your own wallet, you get to decide what to do with it. That's incredibly powerful, but I think we also need to have that really well married with good education and protection and prevention against scams, because it is still too easy for people to get caught in scams, to, confidence scams where people are saying, hey, I've got this great investment opportunity and it looks really good. And we see a lot of people get sucked into that in traditional finance as well as crypto. And the thing that I think is really, really important with crypto is that we have such good visibility. The blockchain is fully transparent. Every transaction is public and is visible. And we can start to pull together, this massive body of data that we have on the blockchain. And with the right tools and analytics, we can be showing to people, hey, this investment that you're sending your money to, it's actually been reported by 1,000 other people around the world as being a scam. Do you want to send your money there? Like, that real-time data we could surface to people. And that's incredibly powerful to help protect against scams.
How many people do you have working in the kind of anti-scam or like security side of Easy Crypto?
I'd like to say that all of my staff work in that to some extent, but in terms of frontline, all of our customer support team are really skilled in this. It's actually probably the majority of their job is when someone emails the help desk, just looking at the language they use, looking at red flags, looking at, is there, we had one yesterday where our newest team member, actually, she saw an email come through from a customer. She was just like, I think this isn't quite right. Gave her a call, found out that she was about to send her money off to a scam, stopped her from doing that. This person had also given access, like through remote access, to the scammer to take control over their entire computer. So she sort of taught them through, you need to call your bank, you need to change your passwords, you need to, remove this access, and kind of like, all of the protections across her emails and bank accounts and everything, much wider than just crypto. So yeah, all of my team work on this, but definitely the front line, the guys who are out there answering your emails and engaging with you on social media. And also we've got a couple of people looking at things like the blockchain analytics and helping see where our customers actually sending their money to. And if it doesn't align with what they think they're doing, then, we need to jump in and let them know, because there might be something dodgy going on.
And I love the fact that you guys are so kind of involved with your customers at that point as well, because that's something like, to have your money scammed is definitely, for I'd say a lot of people, a big push factor away from ever kind of touching this space again. So I think it's a really good thing, and like obviously within your like duties as a company to do, but so many companies fail to do that. And it's also a really nice synergy, I think, between like having the centralized company and then the decentralized aspect. And that's like something that I've kind of been thinking about a lot recently is, you know, how far can we actually take it where we're like can we ever be completely decentralized? Like that's kind of, it seems like it's a long way away at the moment.
I'm not sure that we will actually. Like, I think if you look at other things in history, it feels like we start down a path of decentralization and then we re-centralize. Like even things like email, when that first came out, people were running their own email servers. Like this was actually like, and when I was younger, my brother had one that I used. It was kind of like, it wasn't that uncommon. And earlier than that, people were actually having to set up their own, you know, there wasn't even off the shelf solutions for that. So it's like email started as this decentralized thing that everyone could have their own email server, their own, you know, part of that network. And then because it's simpler, we centralized into services like Gmail and, you know, Hotmail and, whatever else we're using now. And so I think the same thing's going to happen with crypto. Like it started off decentralized. You can run your own node on the Bitcoin network. You can be a validator. You can, you know, be a miner. You can run copies of the chain. But over time, those services just centralize. People might participate in them if there's economic incentives there for, you know, with things like staking. But most likely, most people will just go for, you know, what is the easy, efficient option, which is having a centralized service do it for you. So it's definitely something for us to watch out on. Like where it's important, we probably want to maintain decentralization, and that's really over the control and ownership of your funds and also over the decentralization of the network, right? That the network isn't being controlled or influenced by any one party. That's really important, and control of your funds is important. But then all of the other bits around that, like the user interfaces that make it easy, the, you know, staking as a service things that mean you don't have to have 32 ETH, all of these things are probably going to be centralized just because it's more efficient.
It's a good perspective to come at it with, because I think it's kind of wishful thinking almost that we could be like a completely decentralized world. Like we'd almost have to take humans out of the equation for that to be the case, just with the way things work. And yeah, I think one of the like interesting things that Paul brought up last night, I don't know if I talked about this just before, but like how you guys will call anyone over 70 if they like buy crypto or whatever, just to make sure that they're not dipping their toes into anything.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There definitely are some, I guess, patterns we see with different demographics, and particularly with older customers, you know, they often have less digital experience, they're less savvy with digital stuff. And there are certain things, like one of my team noticed the other day, she's like, I've seen this big increase in older customers enabling all delivery networks. And, you know, this is a feature that we have where if you don't want to send on the default network, you might want to use Matic or TRX or something other than the default network. And she's like, that's probably, you know, that's not expected behavior for someone in their 60s and 70s to necessarily, you know, understand or want to use that. So she sort of dug into a few and found out that this is, you know, potentially a pattern where scammers are doing that. So it's like, you know, there are things like that where we can use things that look perhaps a little bit against the stereotype to help us, you know, identify scams. But it is an unfortunate fact that we do see this more prevalently with older customers. That said, don't get complacent. Like one of the messages that I would love to hammer home on this is that anyone can get caught in a scam because they are so sophisticated, they are so good, they play on your emotions, but also they just, you know, and even emotions like being busy and tired and you just see an email come through and you click a link and this, you know, the number of people that get caught, you know, in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, like, and I am constantly vigilant about it. And I actually, you know, my brother got caught in a phishing scam not too long ago. And I was just like, if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone, right? Because, you know, we know what to look for, we're trained, but then sometimes you're in a moment, you're doing one thing, your mind's somewhere else. And yeah, it's a really hard, it's such a hard one to predict about because they're always evolving, they're always getting different. But I think, you know, the message of always be vigilant, always look out for it, and don't judge someone who's caught in a scam because it really can happen to anyone.
Yeah, that is so true. And they are so sophisticated these days. Like I think the fact that we are expecting to receive stuff digitally as well, that makes a huge difference. Like one of my good friends and myself nearly, I was like just at the last minute before I kind of did anything, like put any money across. It's those NZTA scams. And like everyone is driven on a toll road or has had a parking ticket. And obviously that's like a very big social engineering thing, like emotions to play on. And you're so right. There's not one demographic that it's limited to. And we do go on autopilot for most of my, like when you're not at work or like not doing something that's like really like stimulating, you're just kind of like, well, like in your own little world. So definitely, like I think it's a good message to put across that like no one is immune.
But I think also this is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to crypto being part of the solution on, because like the NZTA text message one, classic, right? Because it's like when you get a text message, you can't check that it's a verified phone number, right? It's just a phone number. When you receive an email, you can't check that it's a verified email. Even looking at a website, there's no like, this is, if it's a .govt.nz, it's probably okay. But even then, like, they can do really sneaky things like use Cyrillic characters that look like this and that. And so there are so many ways that with the way that infrastructure is built, you cannot actually check the validity and the authenticity of any message or any site you're engaging with. Whereas with crypto, like we can start building that kind of stuff in. Like we can start with blockchain. People could verify their identities against their addresses, and you could use zero knowledge proofs to not disclose their identity. Like no one doesn't, you don't have to say this is her full name and date of birth, but you could say this address has been verified, has been validated to someone's ID, and this address has engaged, so many different other addresses have said this is authentic and not, it hasn't been reported as a scam. Like there's a lot of data and stuff that we could start gathering and surfacing. And this is where I want to see the industry building out towards, to have, given the transparency in the blockchain, it should be impossible for people to conduct crime and for scams to happen. And that's the type of blockchain we need to build, is one where that is scam and fraud proof.
You mentioned before that you have some people kind of also monitoring the blockchain to see where people are sending money to. Is that part of the anti-money laundering aspect that you need to have in your business? And what happens if you see something that you're like, this is looking sketchy, I need to report this? And who do you report that to, and how do you deal with something like that?
So there's two sort of separate areas here. Well, there's actually three. There's sanctions, which, Russia got sanctioned, and that's a whole thing that, you have to, as a New Zealand business, we have obligations to not send funds to any sanctioned individual or entity. So sanctions is one area. Then there's anti-money laundering, which is all about trying to prevent funds going for things like terrorism financing and just, laundering proceeds of crime. But then there's scams and frauds. And one of my big bugbears is that in New Zealand, scams and fraud is not part of AML. So for us, we kind of, in some respects, we sort of see all three of those as one kind of bucket. They're our compliance bucket. They're what we do, sort of our blockchain monitoring, and what we're sort of looking out for and trying to stop. But the law distinguishes very, distinctly between sanctions and AML. Is this stuff is not legal, you can't do it. And fraud's just this kind of like, it's just this, it's kind of this forgotten area where, there isn't a dedicated space within police really to deal with it. A lot of this just, goes through frontline where they don't have the resources. There's a lot of really good people in police wanting to deal with financial crime, but there just isn't enough resourcing. And when we see, what we see as a business, we see very, very, very little money laundering. Like the main type of money laundering activity we will see is what's called money mules. And this is another one probably for your audience to be very aware of, because you can become a money mule without being, unwittingly be a money mule. One of the really common ones is, say you get recruited by someone, they've got a job for you, you're like, great, I'm a student, I need a job, this one looks like it's going to pay very well, I can do it from home on my computer, woohoo. And the job is that you are buying Bitcoin for this company. So you come to Easy Crypto and, they deposit money in your bank account, then you buy Bitcoin and send it off. That's not a legitimate job. That's called money laundering. And you can actually go to jail for it. So, that is the thing that we see most commonly, is where people are receiving funds that have been stolen, then they're using it or trying to use it to buy crypto, and they don't realize that they are breaking the law. They think they've got a job, or that they're helping out a friend, or, some other thing like that. But the pure scams and frauds, which we typically, what we would see are investment scams. So someone is knowingly sending their own money off, but they're sending it off to something that is, a fake investment site. Those are the ones that we see them the most commonly. They're really heartbreaking because people are, losing their hard-earned savings, and they're a bit of a black hole when it comes to how we as New Zealand Inc. are trying to fight this stuff. And it's something that I'd love to see a lot more attention and resourcing against, because the problem is huge and it's getting worse, and you're seeing news stories all the day. And it's not a crypto thing. It's, across all of the financial markets, it's banking, it's crypto, it's, all of the other sectors as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, if someone like your brother, and I'm also Sophie and I are very vigilant because we talk about scams and stuff all day. So we know what to look for. But just yesterday, I got like a really sophisticated one about like McAfee virus something renewal. And I'm like, I don't think I have that. But like, I'm pretty sure my old computer had that, and it said it charged me $450. And I was like, It's just they really get you.
They definitely play on it, the trust that you have in the system, I think, a lot, which is, it's very sad because that's the one thing that you don't really want to be eroded, like in any situation. I think in the context of crypto, like people tend to see it as like an assimilated thing, the scam with like the crypto, even though actually for the most part, crypto's got nothing to do with it at all. Yeah. But I was kind of interested, you were talking about zero knowledge proofs before, and we've been kind of trying to wrap our heads around that. And I think it's a really cool innovation and definitely seems like the new frontier in authentication and that kind of thing. So I kind of wondered, what are you kind of seeing at the moment in the industry that's emerging, like new tools and things like that you're really excited about?
Yeah, there's so much cool stuff coming up. And definitely worth talking about zero knowledge a little bit, because I think that's, we've talked quite a lot in this episode about how transparent blockchain is, how everything that happens is public and is visible. And that's like incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly maybe not what you always want when it comes to your money, right? Like the whole thing of, I go down to the corner store and buy some milk and they can see how much I earn and, how much I'm paying in rates and where I shop and everything. It's kind of like, not all transparency is good transparency. And so zero knowledge, like a really basic way to explain it. Have you guys already explained it to your audience, or should I?
I reckon you should explain it.
All right, I'll just give a real basic overview. Like the way I like to talk about it is like, at the moment when I go to the supermarket and if I get ID to buy alcohol, which sadly doesn't happen anywhere near often enough, I show them my ID and they can see my full name, they can see my date of birth, my driver's license number. Like that's actually way too much personal information that I'm giving them. I'd prefer not to give them all of that information. Like they're not photocopying it, so it's fine. I can't believe I used the word photocopy. But, the thing is, like, I'm not just saying to them, yes, I'm over 18, I'm giving them all of this private data. So what zero knowledge is, in a nutshell, is that you can attest to something being true without having to disclose the underlying proof point. So I could have a badge that says, yes, I'm over 18, without them seeing my date of birth. So that's the kind of zero knowledge, premise, which is incredibly powerful because it means that all the stuff on the blockchain that's transparent doesn't have to be breaking our privacy or disclosing more than we want it to. And we were talking before about how great it would be to have validated addresses that you know who you're engaging with. You could do that without necessarily knowing who, but you could know that an address is validated or that it's verified or that it's vouched for by, these other, high quality people. So I think zero knowledge is really important. I'm also really interested in sort of, account abstraction is another cool thing that's coming out at the moment. So that was launched in March on the Ethereum network. I was over at WalletCon in ETH Denver when it came out, so it was pretty exciting. But account abstraction is, I think, a huge step forward in improving the user experience that we have in crypto. So at the moment, crypto, not your keys, not your crypto. And by not your keys, we mean that really long, string of things or your seed phrase of the 12 words. And all of these are like really hard for non-crypto people to get their head around. And even for those of us in crypto, like they're pretty clunky and annoying and like, I should change my wallets more often, but I don't because I just can't be bothered because it's so hard to do, key swaps and, storage of where you put your keys and what you do about, have you guys got like plans for, should you get hit by a bus and like who's going to have access to your crypto? Like all of these things are really big, annoying, complex friction points. Whereas account abstraction is a huge step towards moving away from seed phrases and into a post-seed phrase world where we can actually control and engage with our crypto in a way that's more, I guess, digitally familiar to us rather than, again, crypto was built by techies for techies, and we're now sort of adding in these user experience layers that make it a lot more intuitive and friendly for everyday people.
That's like so exciting. I haven't actually heard of that particular tool yet, but I think that's really cool because that's definitely the way that things need to go. Because I think last time I talked to you, like the way that we classify things in crypto, and particularly when you're talking about like wallets and stuff like that, it's just totally like not the same thing as what you'd think about in a traditional finance sense. So like anything that can kind of move the user interface to something that's more palatable.
So, one sort of example of what account abstraction would look like in practice is imagine you're a company like, I don't know, Nike or something, and you want to give people NFTs in a wallet, but instead of them having to have their own wallet, on your website, you could have something as simple as you guys have used the sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google, that kind of thing. Click that sign in link, and then it automatically generates a wallet for you that's linked to you. You don't need a seed phrase, any of that kind of stuff. It's just your sign-in method is your seed phrase or is your authentication key. And so you could just spin up a wallet on a website as easily as just having that single sign-on button. Man, so that would, you can imagine that bringing in the next billion people into crypto. They wouldn't even need to know that they're in crypto. They're just authenticated themselves, and by extension they're having wallets spun up that they can use and interact with.
Yeah, my God, that is so exciting. Like, I can't believe I haven't heard about that before, but I guess that's why we ask the questions.
Even just giving out your email address to and signing up to websites, that can reveal a lot of information should that website ever get hacked. And so there's an iCloud feature that I'm really loving, is that they can get you a private email with like a really random email. And so I've been signing up to websites using that email. And that's been really good in terms of privacy and not like giving out my email address to all these websites. Like, I don't want to be getting random emails from like people.
It's so good, right? And it's like, we should have had that tech a while ago, but like, and we need this tech in crypto as well. Like, it's technically possible, not enough wallets offer it, but you can spin up a new crypto address for everything you do. So too many wallets, you have a crypto address, one address for Bitcoin, one address for Ethereum, but you can generate unlimited addresses. Similarly with credit cards, you can use digital credit card numbers that you could spin up a different credit card number for every online service you use, which would, massively help from protecting you against those, phishing scams where they, take your credit card and use it to buy whatever. So it's like this kind of technology, we need to see that replicated more in the crypto sphere where, where you have that privacy. And I think that kind of thing hand in hand with zero knowledge proofs is really important for maintaining privacy, but not minimizing safety.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Talking about wallets, I don't know if I want to ask you what do you use, because maybe that's too much private info, but like...
I don't know. When's this episode coming out?
Probably a couple weeks from recording, I'd say. It's normally
Next
like our
week?
turnaround.
Okay, you guys might have to have me back on a little bit later because we're actually building a wallet at the moment. I can't talk about it just yet because we're not close enough to being live, but I got the alpha came out last week, so we're testing it internally and we're going to go out to a beta with a couple of, users in September, and then we'll probably be out in October, so yeah.
Oh, wow,
I haven't come back and talk about wallets because I'm trying to solve all of the things I hate about wallets.
Oh my God, like, this is going to be so popular. This is going to be really good. I can tell. There's so many things wrong with wallets. Don't even get me started. But like, do you use hard wallets? And what do you think about the recent Ledger scandal? How serious do you think that is? And also, like, would you use Trezor, even though that's supposedly better than Ledger?
Yeah, so Al and I have always used Trezor actually, and the reason we chose Trezor originally was because it was open source, and I think there's a huge value in open source software, particularly for stuff like this. There are some known vulnerabilities in Trezor, but again, it's open source. That means everyone in the world is looking at the code, and but the known vulnerability in Trezor is mitigated if you use a passphrase. So as long as you use a passphrase, the vulnerability is not there. So if you do have Trezor, use that feature. Another great thing about Trezors, and maybe I'll do a little Trezor rant. So when I said that you can spin up, you can technically spin up multiple crypto wallets, and not many wallets sort of support this natively. Trezor, they don't publish this feature. It was almost kind of like this hidden feature that I think Alan figured out a few years back. But there's this great feature on Trezor where you can, using different passphrases, you can spin up multiple different wallets. So on my Trezor, I have like maybe 6 or 7 different passphrases that I use. It's one Trezor, but the different passphrases all access different wallets. So they're all private and segregated from each other. And, that's a really useful tool. And so, that tool plus the open source nature is a really compelling feature for Trezor. Ledger have always been the better wallet when it comes to their marketing and their public. They've done a really great job of selling themselves. They're very innovative. They put a lot into their product development. Trezor's lagged a bit in that. Like they were quite slow at adding new coins, whereas Ledger were more on the forefront. The new innovation of Ledger, though, it was a bit of I think we called it an own goal when we put out our comms on it. They created a product that I think is a really good, really brilliant product, but not for their audience. Like, people who use hardware wallets are really very security conscious. They don't want, while this feature would be really awesome for people who are new to crypto, launching it as part of the existing product set, and where it was, you know, a software upgrade that technically you have to do it because we all know what it's like if you try to avoid doing software upgrades, right? So they effectively forced all of their users onto this feature that they didn't want, which was, you know, gave Ledger the ability to recover their private key for them, which goes completely against the not your keys, not your crypto ethos. And then they sort of doubled down on that by coming out with some really bad comms. For anyone out there who's doing sort of PR, this was a masterclass in what not to do. Some of the notable ones where, you know, everyone was railing against this, you know, effectively this technology that would allow Ledger to access their private keys. And the Ledger team at one point said, oh, well, we could always technically do that. You were just trusting us not to. And it was like,
oh, no.
So, you know, another reason why that open source technology is really good, because Ledger was always closed doors, you know, and for good reason. They want to protect their IP, and I, you know, appreciate that. But you couldn't see what was going on under the hood. So that fact that Ledger had always had the ability to extract private keys wasn't something that anyone knew or wanted for that to be possible. And it did create a massive uproar. And, you know, we saw a lot of people, you know, that had purchased Ledgers returning them. We've seen our sales of Ledgers drop massively, and Trezor's, you know, obviously picked up a good bit of market share off that.
Yeah, I'm currently like doing some videos for Trezor, and it's taking me so long because like since the Ledger scandal, I'm doing so much due diligence on Trezor.
One thing I'd say on that, like definitely set up the passphrase, and obviously you can have multiple ones, which is good. But the other thing that I always do is, when you get in the Trezor suite, or, you know, however you're engaging with it, you get the option to enter the passphrase on your computer. I always enter it on the Trezor because it's just one more step that if you have a keylogger or something like that, you know, it can't get it if you enter it on the Trezor. So it's a little bit of a pain with those tiny, tiny buttons, but, you know, worth it for that extra peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the note of crypto tokens, you mentioned that Ledger was on the forefront of adding crypto tokens. How does Easy Crypto decide like what crypto tokens they're going to put on the platform, and are there tokens that you refuse to put on?
Yeah, really. But yeah, so what we do is we're really led by our community into what you guys want to see. So if you head to our rates page, there's a link on there. It says, you know, want a token that's not here, vote for it. So then you can go to our vote page, or it's also easycrypto.com/vote. So if you want to see a new coin listed, vote for it. And then when things are at the top of the voting list, we'll just sort of periodically grab them and get them listed. The only things that we don't list are if we can't list them, if they're debt or equity securities, but we haven't actually found any of those yet. Interestingly, XRP has been one that's been on our watch list for quite a while of, is it, isn't it? We know there's not a clear-cut line on this, so that SEC ruling was really helpful. Then we look at, you know, technically, can we source it? Can we access it? Really fringe, very small tokens that aren't widely traded, we might not be able to. And we also look at ethically, do we want to list it? And this is the hardest category to judge. We don't often choose not to list things for ethical reasons. Like we did list, what was the most recent meme coin that came out? We listed Pepe coin because we're like, okay, everyone knows that it's a meme coin. It's like, you know, we think people who are buying Pepe coin are going into this with eyes open, knowing that it's like probably a pump and dump or some sort of crazy speculation. It's like, you know, guys, you do you. But the one that we didn't list recently, it was last year, I think, was called Safe Moon. And it was this token that was, you know, very much sort of like pushing itself as a, you know, as a safe investment that was going to moon, was pretty much their premise. And we're just like, this is a Ponzi scheme. And the type of customers that we saw coming through wanting to buy it were people who are new to crypto. They sort of thought they were buying into an investment that was going to make them money, whereas people who are buying the meme coins are typically more the savvy crypto investors who are doing it for the lols. So the ethical judgment one is definitely a tricky one. We don't want to list coins where people are going to lose money, but at the same time, we don't want to be gatekeepers of what you can or can't do with your funds. So.
There's also so much crypto news out there, so many tech developments, like the crypto world moves so fast. How do you stay sane, and how do you filter your news?
I have to say, when I started Easy Crypto, I used to joke that, like, you know, I used to know stuff about crypto and then I started a crypto business, and I just lost the ability to keep up because it moved so fast and I was so busy. And that was 6 years ago. And now I'm like, I don't have a chance. But, no, I am lucky that I have a team of very amazing people who have their finger on the pulse. And so I actually get most of my news from reading our internal Slack channels. But we do have a couple of those people out, and, you know, the Easy Crypto Facebook page, we'll be putting news out on that. And Louise McFarlane from our team also runs a Women in Crypto group, and she's always putting out really good updates, and she's great at sort of like, you know, consuming all of the info that's going on and then putting out like really good sort of weekly wraps on what's been happening. I know she puts them out in her social groups.
Is she writing the Easy Crypto emails? Because I get those like kind of updates.
Do you get that? They've got a few different ones. We've got the monthly one, but then there's also a weekly update that's kind of like a market commentary at sort of like the financial and economic stuff. Paul, who Sophie you saw last night, does those ones. So yeah, we'd be interested to know actually sort of feedback from your listeners as to like what kind of channels and what kind of info is useful for us to be putting out, or conversely, perhaps people get enough news and media out there as it is that they don't need sort of more crypto summaries and commentaries. But yeah, I agree, Akita. It's like it is such a fast moving, such a crazy space with so much happening, and it's like really, really hard to keep up even when you're, you know, this deep in it.
Yeah. It's just so difficult.
Yeah, there's like this phrase that I feel like I'm gonna get wrong, but it's like a day in crypto is like a month in like traditional finance.
We got a bit cut off right at the end here because Janine's assistant was on holiday. We are definitely going to have her back on at some stage. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next week or the next.